Well, it's a beautiful day here at MUGELLO for the 12 hours, powered by Hankook. Qualifying for TCE coming up. It's the first round of the European Swing, or the first event of the European Swing, and indeed the first round of the European Championship for the 12 hours for the TCE and GT series this year, powered by Hankook. It's the RSL team on site, Paul Trustwell, Johnny Palmer and me, John Hindhaugh, with Joe Bradley down in the pits for this first part of qualifying, and we really could not have had a better day. The paddock looks absolutely superb. It's packed. It's really looking very professional now, and a big step forward being taken. We've had the 24 hours of Dubai, the first and traditional first opening round of the season. And that was the opening to the Championship of the Continents. From MUGELLO here, we move in just about a month's time to Spa-Francorchamps, then to Brno in the Czech Republic, then to Portugal for the first of the European 24 hours at Portimao circuit. Barcelona, one of the great favourites, is at the end of August, beginning of September, and then we're off on the travels again with the flyaway to end the season for the Championship of the Continent at the 24 Hours of Corte, Austin, Texas. This is a beautiful part of Italy. Tuscany, a great destination, not only for international travellers, but also from those from the local times. Near to Florence, a lot of holiday homes around this area, and nestled in the hillside is MUGELLO, better known for motorcycling, perhaps for the MotoGP, but works very well indeed for cars. And down in the pit lane for this first session of competitive driving, the TCE qualifying, is Joe Bradley.
Good afternoon, everybody. First competitive session of the European season, and what a place to start it. That is real, everybody. That's not CGI. That is the real backdrop to the circuit MUGELLO. What a fantastic place to be. The sweeps and turns of this very demanding circuit already catching a few people out this morning. People struggling to get those tyres working. We're about to go ahead with our TCE qualifying session. It's classes A3 and TCR. I don't know where I'm going to put my money. It's anybody's bet who's going to be on pole for tomorrow, or indeed this afternoon.
Yes, good point, Joe. Nice point, well made, that we are in fact actually racing this afternoon, Johnny, with the first 3 hours. And there will be strategy playing out in that 3 hours. OK, we'll get to qualifying in a moment, which is still a couple of minutes away. And actually qualifying here, because of the way the race has been formatted with 3 then 9 this time, we did 4 then 8 2 years ago when we were here. Actually, qualifying might be quite important because this is a tricky circuit to pass on.
Yeah, it is. Of course, 3 hours rather than the 4 on Friday means that you're less likely to go a lap down, and that's the key, really, staying on the lead lap for the first few hours. Remember, it's not all about the GT3 class or the TCE leaders as well, because this rather complicated restart laps method that timeservice.nl are so on top of and have to be. And thanks to Harold and to Rob for help through previous meetings, previous years of trying to work out how the cars are gridded up for Saturday morning. But it's all about staying in touch with your class leader, effectively. So the overall race leader can lap you, and you don't need to necessarily be concerned about that. Just stay within, ideally, a few seconds of the class leader. 30 minutes of this first session is about to tick down then, with 20 TCE cars expected to head out onto track at any moment. But yeah, arguably in this format, it's going to be a little easier to stay within the mix on Friday. Saturday's more difficult, though, 9 hours rather than 8 that we had 2 years ago.
And Paul, you made the point in our audio coverage of free practice. There was a bit of a scramble as the green flag is now flying. The 30 minutes is counting down for this TCE qualifying session. With 3 hours on the clock, that's pretty close to a pit stop time anyway. So a lot of people were coming in while they could before the end of the 3 hours. Not the last time we were here, the time before, which is now 3 years ago. And that caused a bit of consternation at the fuel stops.
But as you say, there was fewer fueling stations available then. It's one of those things where you have to be a little bit canny about it. It's a bit like knowing when a safety car is going to come out, because the intervention works, as Johnny was just saying, like a safety car. It bunches everybody up that's on the lead lap in the two divisions. So you're right, you don't need to worry about the GT overall leader going past you, but you do need to be on the TCE division lead lap.
Okay.
And it's going to bunch everybody up together. So if you're leading, you can pretty much guarantee that by the end of the 3 hours, you're going to have your lead wiped out. If you're in second place, then you want to make your pit stop towards the end of the first 3 hours in order to have a full tank of fuel, because you know that any disadvantage you have, as long as you can stay on the lead lap, you're going to get that lead back again, because you're going to be bunched up together again. So you're looking at as if I've misspoken or confused you.
No, because you've had plenty more conversations with the timing guys than I have. It's just I know that it was here in previous years where we've had, for instance, a cracking battle in A6 AM heading to the end of Friday, 5 seconds between them. The A6 Pro and overall leader then gets between those two leaders. And some of us on the team thought that was going to make the A6 AM battle dead for Saturday. And actually, they were restarted on the same lap.
Yes.
Because it's judged by the class leader rather than the overall leader.
Yes, absolutely. I was making the distinction to the division because there are two separate starting grids, so that the TCE division will again all be bunched up together. And the trick will be, I've spoken to one team manager about this, is if you can extend if you're leading the TCE division, and if you can extend your stint to beyond 3 hours, then even if you have to come in at the beginning of part 2, if you're in the lead, because everyone else is going to be coming in at the end of part 3, you could actually get a lap lead on the whole field. And then, okay, you have to make a pit stop at the early stages of part 2, but you've got a lap of a cushion to sit on to do that.
Yeah, at least a lap.
And there may be a code 60 at the beginning of part 2.
And that assumes that everybody who goes in at the end of the previous part of the race gets clean service and only drops 1 lap to you. It could be more. It could be more than that. We'll talk much more about that as we're getting towards the end of the first part of the race, which is today. Later on this afternoon, check the schedule for details on the website. Monloud competition out early on in the 109 car, and that is the Spanish run team with the Thai drivers. 1 semi-pro and the rest all AM. Drivers. I did see Stuart Hall's name next to the 107. Oh, and the little Peugeot has gone off the 685 car and put the front wheels, that's the Dan Agro racing car, put the front Hankooks into the gravel track. That was just cold rear tyres.
Rennie Rasmussen.
Rennie Rasmussen, says Paul, in that car. That looks to me like the downhill run before Arabiata won, and that is, I'm afraid, a mistake by René, and characteristic one from him, but just, Johnny, with no heat in the rear tyres, the Hankooks gave up their grip and rather caught René out a bit.
Yeah, and it's
lazy spin, but he's gone into the gravel.
It's not, well, it wasn't a great finish to free practice for the Dan Agro car. I mean, that ended in the gravel trap as the checkered flag came out, and we ended the session under code 60, I'm pretty sure, and now 30 minutes of qualifying starts with a code 60 with exactly the same car in strife. I don't know whether it's fallen off at the same point of the circuit. Probably not. This is at turn 5.
It was turn 5. I'm pretty
sure
certain
that is turn 5, because that's not a left-hander on our map, and
I think it's turn
further
7.
round at 7. Yeah, that would
add to this, guys?
That would make sense that it was at Savelli corner rather than Borgo San Lorenzo, which is a little earlier on in the lap.
I would concur with that. Joe Bradley?
Yeah, one of the technical vagrancies of getting the best out of a front-wheel drive car is getting that rear axle on an optimum tyre temperature. A little bit too cool, the back end can be too loose and can do to you what has just happened to the Peugeot. So it's very key to get those tyres to work on the rear. The front end, that can do its job. That'll just pull you around. But it's the rear end that's crucial on a front-wheel drive car, bizarrely, especially considering the ambient and track temperatures we have. They're a little bit odd.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Absolutely right. And that has caught out René Rasmussen there. So everyone else is circulating because as soon as that car is pulled out of the gravel, of course, we'll be back to green flag racing. So there's no point in really coming in because all you're going to do is lose any tyre temp that you've got. So I expect to see everybody weaving around, accelerating. You can't accelerate and brake, of course, which is the best way to get temperature into the tyres. Heat the brakes up. You can drag the brakes, I suppose. You're going to get a bit of heat into it that way. 639 is the very pretty eggshell blue BMW of WEC Motorsport. It's the venerable E46 shape. And Dave Cox's entry with Jason Cox and George Haynes and Guy Povey in that car.
names to conjure with, aren't they, all for British drivers there.
Which Guy Povey is that then?
That's the former British production saloon driver of Vauxhall Astras, I think.
Which is why I asked that question, yeah.
I mean, there are some great names in the TCR class. I mean, we already mentioned Stuart Hall. We've got Vincent Rademacher at the wheel of the 188 AC Motorsport Audi RS3. He's joined by James Kay. You've got Dan Wheeler and Alan James driving the Synchro Motorsport Honda.
Bright red with the Union flag on the roof. That one we should be able to spot.
Absolutely. There was somebody else in...
And that's the new version, of course, of the... is that the FK9, I think it's called now?
It is the FK9. I'm not
the Honda.
That...
FK8.
Oh, no, it's FK8. Sorry,
FK8.
Yes. I don't think they've done a 9 quite yet. No, FK8 was new last year.
Yes, yeah. Did they always run a red car, though? I don't seem to remember them running a bright red car.
They have. I remember a red and black car in British touring car days, but in this championship...
They used to run black cars, didn't they?
Yes.
The FK7 was black with red graphics.
I think the FK8 has always been red.
Right, I might just not have seen that
car
for
a few races last year, didn't it? Yeah. Paul?
I was just trying to think. Jean-Philippe Belloc is out there as well somewhere, but I don't think I think he's not in a TCR. No, he's in a 911. Sorry, a 991 class. It's the Porsche Lorient racing car that Jean-Philippe Belloc is out at. But there are all kinds of drivers that you kind of think, oh my goodness, he's out. And of course, in the we've also got Michael Schrei out later on as well, driving in one of the Bonk Motorsport cars.
I do like the Renault RCZ. It was a bit of the Peugeot RCZ, thank you, Nick. It was a bit of a departure from Peugeot when that car came out, and we've seen it racing for a few years now. The double
I remember
bubble.
seeing that for the first time I did the Nürburgring 24 Hours, 2012.
Yes. That was before the road car came out, wasn't it?
I've never seen anything like that, certainly from Peugeot, and any sort of car styling. It's weird. It's almost like a VW Beetle in that it looks kind of the same shape, whichever way round you turn it.
I think it was designed by... and you might want to check this. I think it was designed by Peter Schreier, who was the...
It's the TT Mark II.
The TT. It was the TT Mark.
It's the TT Mark II.
Yeah, but what he's done in it, which I thought was very nice, is that double bubble roof is very French and very Alpine, actually, which is why I said Renault earlier on. The double bubble roof, which actually extends to the rear screen.
Like
two
7-foot guys have got into a car with a low slung roof and sort of popped
but it
the
extends
skin
to
up.
the rear screen to make the rear windscreen glass is a tremendously complex shape, so it matches in with the roof. For those of a certain age, you'll remember DAF 55s and DAF 66s running in rallycross with a bubble in the roof to get the driver under at Lydden Hill. The Dutch, I think it was the De Roy brothers who ran those, but I thought it was a fantastic departure for Peugeot.
I like the fact that the A pillar is closer to the front of the car than the C pillar is to the rear of the car, and it sort of shifts the cockpit forward in the machine, and it creates almost like a back shelf, but very stylish. And I remember seeing the lines of that car as it came out of the pit lane.
Green flag.
As we often at the Nürburgring gawp at the machinery in use from the Aston Martin lounge, and have done over the last few years. That was a real moment for me, and it still looks very futuristic. Good to have. It's only one in the entry, isn't it? But
Yes.
possibly not the only Peugeot. I know we had 2 Peugeots in VLN last weekend. And I just need to check now to see how many. No, it is just the only Peugeot.
There's the only one
as well.
in this
Because
race.
Team Ava Solo, who used to run those, Jakob Christensen's team, I noticed their sponsorship was on another car when I was up on the banksides yesterday. I think it was on a TCR car. It's on the Hyundai, yeah. The i30N. So that may well give us some clues as to what's going on there. All right, back up to speed. Stuart Hall then, with a number of drivers who are familiar to him and he to them, but Stuart out doing qualifying in the Monlau competition based pretty much around the corner from the Circuit de Catalunya at Barcelona. They are very much the local team there. And Stuart also getting to grips, literally, Johnny, with front-wheel drive, because I don't think he's driven a front-wheel competition car before.
No, I had a chat with him yesterday, and he said this is his first experience of a front-wheel drive car, and the other guys that he's worked with before in Aston Martins, in GT4 spec, they're all brand new to this as well, but loving the challenge. I understand that Stuart can't do all the races, so when he's busy elsewhere, and probably also in a Creventic race, but in the GT class, it's going to be Dan Brown who replaces him in amongst Chris Kemp and Tom Black and the others.
Joe Bradley's just reminded me of something that I had thought and then dismissed as me being senile. Didn't Stewie Hall race the Accelerate Mini at Silverstone in the 24 hours?
Yeah, he was in the entry list, but that was the race that, if you remember, combined GT cars
That's
and
right, he drove
the
both
touring
classes.
cars
That's
in the same race, and he was supposed to drive the Mini in the second part of the race, the bit that was TCR only, or TCE only, but because he'd won in the Aston Martin in the first 12 hours, he never actually drove it in the second 12 hours because he was a bit tired. Bless him, after having gone so fast in the Aston Martin.
But he will have driven it.
Joe is
in
absolutely
session,
right that he was down to drive it in on the entry list, and he drove it in qualifying.
Yes, so he has had. He was lying to me then yesterday. He has had front-wheel drive experience, just not a race result.
He probably couldn't remember it because he'd been going so fast in the other car. It probably slipped his memory.
Overtook himself.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it's the other Monlau car that's gone quickest.
Yeah, and we'll get some times at the moment. We're going to describe a lap for you with Synchro in that FK8 Honda as they come towards the end of the lap now. And who's in that car? That is
Alan James.
It is Alan James. Right, out of the final corner and down a 1.142 kilometre front straight, over the top of the brow and heading down into turn 1, looking for your braking point on the left-hand side. It's not the easiest thing to see, but there's some white markers on the wall. The TCR car's braking at the first of the 2 big white markers. Easy to drift out in the middle of the first corner as you start to climb the hill to Luco and Poggio Secco, which is the first set of S's. I'm not going to call it a chicane. Gear change in the middle of those 2 corners there, up to 4th gear. Probably hold it right up to the rev limiter in 4th, and then down to 3rd for Materazzi and Borgo San Lorenzo, the second set of S's. Then over the top of another brow, lots of blind brows here, setting up for Casanova. Still in 3rd gear. Have to stay at the right hand side of the road here because the last left-hander comes up next. Down the hill to the infuriating corner. Arrabbiata, 1 and 2. Have to get that line absolutely right on the first part of Arrabbiata, and then going up the hill, late apex, over the rise. The front-wheel drive cars will scramble for grip there just a little bit before coming into another 180-degree right-hander. Another one named after one of the local towns. down into that now. Set the car up on the left-hand side of the road, just over to the little brow again, so you can't quite see anything on the apex. Now this one again is an extremely late apex on this corner. It almost makes it 2 corners because you want to be across the right-hand side of the road for the Bondetti. Again, S's, not really chicane. With the sleeping policeman on there, it can be very easy to take too much curb, but that's a 4th gear run with the TCR cars. Final corner, all about patience. Make sure you get to the apex very, very late. And then snatch a gear before you go out on the tricolore coloured curbstones. Up into 5th gear, and Alan James will stop the clocks as he goes across the line in a 2 minutes 9.177, and that puts him second in the A3 category. So that's the Synchro Honda FK8.
Meanwhile, Stuart Hall has been exceeding track limits and has had a time disallowed for exceeding track limits, although shouldn't actually affect him too much because the time that he had disallowed was a 2 minutes 1.490, and on his next lap he did a 2 minutes 1.115. So Stuart Hall going rapidly, but he's not top. And into the under, we said anything under 2 minutes is going to see you well. We've got 3 cars under 2 minutes at the moment. Kantadi Kuziri, who's in the other, the Thai drivers Monolau competition car, number 109, and it's Kantadi Kuziri who's done 1 minute 59.196, good half a second quicker.
That's hauling.
Than anybody else. Vincent Rademacher is second fastest in the AC Motorsport Audi, car number 188, 159.638. He's brought the car back into the pits now. And then third fastest is car number 102, the Hongard Motorsport Golf of Benny Simonsen. And Benny has done a 159.716. We've got 3 drivers in 3 different cars, a Cupra, an Audi and a VW, in the top 3 places, all under 2 minutes. And then fourth fastest is Max Partel, car number 115, the Bonk Motorsport Audi RS3. Emil Seilberg is then next up in number 110. He's 5th fastest. Car 110 is the Swedish Lestrup Racing Team Golf. And then Fabian Stantz is next up in car 112, the Autorama Motorsport with Wolf Power, Volkswagen Golf. And Fabian Dantz has set the 6th fastest time. 7th up is Cody Hill in the Red Camel Jordan.NL car. He's done a 2 minute 0.7. And then 8th fastest is Matteo Arrigosi in car number 312, the First Centre Porsche team. That's the fastest of the SP3 class cars.
Kantadi Kuziri, though, a former TCR Asian champion, so certainly not too shabby in these TCR cars. He was racing Bentley Continentals in Super GT last year as well, so a very good peddler indeed. Silver rated and 25 years old from Thailand, as Paul Truswell says. Fastest by 1.1 seconds now, because Benny Simonsen has shaved the gap very slightly with the fastest Sector 2 time for Holmgard Motorsport, their Volkswagen Golf, going even faster on this lap, car 102.
But that's taken second place away from Vincent Rademacher, who was second. So Vincent Rademacher in the Audi RS3 is in a 159.6, and as Johnny says, Benny Simonsen with a 159.5.
But a time deleted for the Dane, so Rademacher back to second fastest with car 188.
That lap being taken from him by a track limit infringement. So he's been in, he's got brand new tyres on the front of that car, and he's back out to try again, this time within the constraints. That's Stewie Hall in the 107 Monlag car, back out to try and get that fast time. Meanwhile, just been joined by the sister car, the 109, who currently, I think, guys, is currently on the provisional pole.
That is correct. A lot of interest in motor racing in Thailand, led of course a few years ago by and held a few years ago by Race of Champions, going to the Ramanganjala National Stadium and having Natavude Jaransuka Watana taking part in that, and then subsequently he and a couple of other Thai drivers coming over to VLN, Johnny, and to Nürburgring 24 for Toyota Gazoo Team Thailand. Now they ran a couple of little Toyota crossovers in VLN 1 for some other Thai drivers who it looks like they're trying to get qualified for maybe for N24. So definite investment in the future there, an investment in more drivers by Toyota Gazoo Racing Team Thailand.
Yeah, a couple of Toyota CHRs, wasn't it, joining the Toyota GT86 and the Subaru BRZ in the SP3 category, but Kusiri not part of the VLN first meeting of the season, VLN 1 last weekend. Guy from Chonburi in Thailand, and as I say, Super GT experience and a former TCR champion. So leading this session by 1.2 seconds, hanging on to provisional pole. Vassal Redemacher going quicker again though with a 159.139. So he's got within 3/4 of a second now of the Thai driver Kusiri's time, 109, and car 109 sits in the pits. As to the third and fourth fastest cars in this session, Benedict Simonsen, who had gone briefly second fastest, but to have that time removed because of a track limit infringement at turn 5 at Borgo San Lorenzo. So Simonsen back out on track, probably with a new set of Hankooks now at his disposal. Max Partel, fourth fastest in the 115 Bonk Motorsport Audi, and that car is also in the pits. We've got 3 different manufacturers represented in the top 3 so far in this session, Paul.
Absolutely, and the SP3 class car still 8th fastest overall, being the Porsche of the AMAG First Centre Porsche of Ticino, Matteo Aragosi, leading the way in the SP3 class. In the A3 class, despite Renaud Ramson's little mistake at the beginning of the session, he has now gone quickest in the class, number 685, and he's done a 2 minutes 7.108 to lead the way in A3, ahead of the Synchro Motorsport Honda Civic. You mentioned turn 5, Borgo San Lorenzo as being the one that has been catching them out. The other area that has been catching them out is Pelagio, turn 11, which is a left-hander coming down after the long right on the far side of the circuit.
That's another corner named after a local
Pelagio is one of the villages, not too far away. But it's kind of the second part of the left-right sweeps where they're running wide on the exit, and that's what's being causing the lap times to be disqualified. Benny Simpson having another time disallowed there, and I've lost count of the number of laps now that have been disallowed, but I think there's probably been as many disallowed as there have been allowed. Joe Bradley down in the pit lane.
Yeah, Alan James has just brought the Synchro Honda in. Now, call me a detective, but bits of gravel on the pit lane, dusty wheels. Alan, you were pushing very hard, clearly.
I'd like to say there's a lot of dirt on the track, but there probably is now after that. Yeah, unfortunately, I was pushing a bit too much. We tried to keep an old set of rears on, thinking they'd last, and they weren't any good, so we had new fronts and old rears. Dan's now gone out on all new. There's more time in the car, but we're just still learning, and the brake balance isn't quite right, so we're trying to adjust all that, but we're quite happy. Never been here before, enjoying it, so that's the main thing.
Well, you're in second place, albeit a couple of seconds off. You've now handed Dan Wheeler a lighter car, less fuel. Is that now in qualifying trim?
That's it, yeah, qualifying mode. Lucky didn't lose any body trim in that as well, but no, we expect, our predictives are showing that we should be doing 8s, maybe on a lucky day we do a 7, but that Peugeot doing a 6, I think we'll get that. So we just rely on the endurance of our car and the 12-hour race and see where we end up.
And where are you most committed on this track? I mean, I would suggest pretty much everywhere, I would think.
Yeah, it is an amazing place. First time here, and it's quite impressive. I don't know the turn numbers yet, but there's a set of S's coming through. I think they call it the Ducati stand or somewhere around there. Is quite nice when you get that nailed right. The exit speeds are very high. We don't use 6th gear very often, and we're in 6 at the end of this straight. So I don't know what our top speed is, but
it's over a kilometre long, this straight. It's beautiful.
It is, yeah, and it's a nice view. You actually get a chance to look at the mountains as you come through, which is quite nice. But no, we're still pushing. There is time we can see on our deltas that we're losing huge time in the middle sector with just confidence in the car and confidence on the brakes. But we'll get there. We'll keep going.
Common or garden question at this stage of any endurance race. Is it important, qualifying?
Oh, that's bragging rights, I think, maybe more than anything else. But no, we just want to know where our potential in the car is, and what everyone else is doing. Well, we can't control that. If we're slightly off what we think is our quickest time, then we need to be aiming for that. If they're quicker again, well, we can't control that, and then we'll just see how we get on in a race.
Thanks, Alan. Great stuff.
Good to hear from Alan Jones. Down there, Alan James, excuse me, down there in the pit lane. So that means that it's Dan Wheeler behind the wheel of the 676 FK8 Honda.
Great to hear Alan saying that he was enjoying himself, and that's what matters.
Big smile on his face when he was saying that as well, yeah.
And I think that's the case for a lot of the teams. Yes, of course, they're competitive and they want to win, but at the end of the day, they're here to have fun.
Yes. And I remember that I think the last Creventic race I did last year was Barcelona in 2018, when that car, the Synchro Motorsport FK8, was pretty much written off with Andrew Hack at the wheel, and it came back in bits. But basically, I assume that's a brand new car now, although running the same livery, because there wasn't a great deal retrievable from a strange incident which happened partway around the Barcelona lap last year.
Which I remember Andrew describing as one of the biggest accidents he'd ever had in his career.
Well, the car went end over end, I seem to remember.
Did it really?
Yeah, when he caught somebody going rather slowly in the really fast part of where Barcelona loops back on itself, and it was just coming up to the fast right-hand kink, I think, and just didn't expect someone to be slowing down in that position.
3 minutes to go in the session. Stewie Hall has had his lap time disqualified, not just for exceeding the track limits once, not just for exceeding them twice even, but at 3 different corners. Turn 5, turn 7 and turn 11 were all, whether they all were on the same lap, they've all got the same time on the race control message, so I'm assuming they were all on the same lap.
5, 7 and 11, what's the next corner in the sequence then? There's got to be a mathematical progression there. It's not the Fibonacci sequence, but it's the Stewie Hall sequence.
It's probably on the turn going out of the car park, going back to the hotel afterwards. But
there's a few places
raging with that. I mean, he's one of the drivers who is a competitive driver.
Yeah,
but the fact he hasn't even got within half a second of the 2-minute mark. So currently having
7th position for the moment for that car.
Absolutely, 2 minutes 0.623. The good thing is that his fastest lap that he's done actually hasn't been disallowed. So that 2 minutes 0.623 is the fastest lap that he's done.
The blue and green Audi from Bonk is in 4th position, the 115 car. And the BMW 310, which I was looking at yesterday and couldn't work out what it was. That's an SP3 car, and it sounds outrageous as it's going through.
Well, the 203 is the one that we were struggling to identify.
Car,
yeah, that looks slightly more like a BMW M4,
the 310,
which is the JR. No, it's the Munkoff car, isn't it? The 310.
But it's got a
but the
very
203 is a silhouette car.
I mean, even the Munkoff car doesn't have a standard diffuser.
Okay.
So, which I presume is why that's not in GT. Is that in GT4 spec? No, it's not.
No, it's not a GT4 car.
No,
it's an
exactly.
SP3 car.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's known as an M4 GTR. With a lot of extra aero around the rear, and particularly that diffuser. But I mean, the 203 BMW takes that to an even greater level,
of course.
Red, white, and black. Are they your favourite colours?
They are this weekend, yeah. And
I think always.
Weekend.
Every weekend, no, it looks great, that Munkoff car. And the rear screen flexing as the car vibrates through Biandetti chicane and then into Bucine, the hairpin at the end of the lap.
Just over half a minute of the session remaining. Still, the time set earlier on by Cantadine Kusiri, 1:58.391, stands as the fastest lap of the session.
Is that an improvement in second? Certainly an improvement to the time.
Yep, 58.560 puts Benny Simonson ahead of Vincent Rademacher.
That's the 102 car.
Benny has been there before, but had his time disallowed. So we'll see whether this one is allowed.
That's the Golf GTI TCR of Holmgard Motorsport, 102.
Yes, Jonas Magnus Holmgaard, where the team name comes from, and Roy Edlund joining Benny Simonsen. Benny installed for qualifying duties.
Is Jonas Holmgaard also in the entry for that 102?
Yes, he is on one of the earlier lists.
Right, but he's not. Right, that was my question, whether he's still on the
I
entry
did just
list.
say his name.
You said Magnus.
I said Jonas and Magnus.
You said Jonas and Magnus, okay,
Yeah.
right.
But only used the surname after Magnus. That might have been the confusing factor. Monlau Competition, still Kusiri fastest, and still the Thai driver is at the wheel with the checkered flag
And
now
he's just
being
improved.
displayed.
He's just gone quicker again. 58.2. 1 minute 58.2 last time around. So stretches the gap to 2 3/4 tenths back to second place. So we've got Cupra, Volkswagen and Audi in the top 3.
Yeah, we've always sort of had them there, but they're in a slightly different order now because Volkswagen faster than Audi with Simonsen's time. It'd be good to get a Cooper up there as well. Sorry, we already have got a Cooper. Good to get a Seat up there, but that's going to take some work in the closing stages.
Where's the Hyundai?
Quite a way back.
Yeah.
It's
With
13th out of 13.
Jan Engelbrecht
Engelbrecht.
already over the line to see the checkered flag, so he's not going to improve from 15th position and 13th in class.
So let's see if there's anybody else still to come around. I don't think so, with Aragossi in the pit lane in the SP3. So it is Cupra, Volkswagen, Audi, Cupra, Volkswagen, Cupra, and then the first non-TCR car is the SP3 leader, and that's the Earmark First Century Porsche Ticino team in the 312. But Monlau Competition, gentlemen, the Spanish team ahead of Holmgaard Motorsport. That's a good qualifying for the 109 squad, Paul.
Indeed, yes, and 2/10 isn't a lot, but in terms of TCR is usually
significant.
Have they got a car that will last for 12 hours? We'll have to wait and see, because that's the challenge of this kind of thing. And very often the TCRs, yes, they're reliable. They get through to the end of the race without a problem, they get to the end of the race, but very often it is not without a problem, and that they do have little things that go along the way to make things absolutely right. Slightly disappointing that the Red Camel Jordans.NL Cupra only down in 5th fastest place. That's Ivo Broika's team that he shares with Henry Littig and Cody Hill, who did the driving in that qualifying session. 2 minutes 0.227 seconds, and we've got Joe Bradley, who's got the pole position man Kandahi Kuziri.
He's trying to get him. Joe, how are you doing?
He quite literally has just stepped out of the car.
That'll do.
And I'm gonna force the gentleman to take his helmet off. I think he was going to go back to the pit, but I think it's worthwhile to talk to you. Kandahi Kuziri, pole position for TCE. Did you guys expect this?
Yeah, because I think they give a very good car for me, so that's why I can dominate the lap time.
Right.
Yeah.
And also you went even quicker on the final lap. You're pushing all the way.
Because I have traffic on the last lap, so that's why. But the gap is quite big, so I don't want to push anymore.
How much experience do you have of the Cupra? Have you driven this kind of car before?
Yeah, I used this one for TCI Asia. So yeah, that's why I know the car quite well. So you see.
And we're going to take this into the race. Do you think we're just trying to not get knocked down? Do you think this is going to be competitive performance from the Monlau car with you guys in the race also?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, maybe.
See how happy this young man is.
Yeah.
Great job. Absolutely fantastic job. It's great to see the 109, the Monlau car, with this driver lineup from Thailand. Total international series this is.
Yeah, fantastic, Joe. I'll echo those thoughts. And Monlau Competition with great experience, great success from the 24 hours of Barcelona, as we've been mentioning, and certainly can make a car last through 24 hours. So you would have thought 12 hours shouldn't really be a problem. Obviously, you can't touch the car after 3 hours today. It goes into parc fermé conditions. I'm just looking at the past records for Kandahi Kuziri. As I said a little earlier on, champion for the TCR Asian Series in 2017 when he was driving a Liqui Team Engstler Volkswagen Golf, and took a number of wins through that season, 4 in total, and then did some more TCR Asian racing last year. And I reckon that was when it was a Seat Leon. Yes, it was, when he did a couple of Korean races. Yes, just to remind you, SP3 fastest car was the number 312 Porsche Cayman GT4 CS. And I know Joe Bradley's hard at work beneath us trying to chase down the SP3 pole sitter. So, Joe, you're looking for car 312 if you can find it, which is the AMAG First Century Porsche Ticino entry of Switzerland. So they're Swiss flagged, but Mr. Arrigossi you'll be searching out for.
And in A3, the fastest time in A3 set by the Dan Agro Racing Peugeot, car number 685, the RCZ. And that was a car that René Rasmussen put into the gravel very early on in the session. And just lost all my times because the timekeepers have reset themselves onto the next qualifying session, whilst the TCEs get taken off to post-session qualifying. We'll be preparing, therefore, for a similar 30-minute session, Johnny, for the GT qualifying, scheduled to start in 3.5 minutes' time, so not much of a gap between the two qualifying sessions.
The Mugello 12 hours, back to Italy and back to this part of Tuscany, then travels the Creventic 24H series. Johnny Palmer and Paul Truswell set to take you through the second dose of qualifying for Friday, ahead of 3 hours of racing on the bill for later on today. That's just the first part, the first quarter indeed, of the Mugello 12 hours for 2019. A 3-hour plus 9-hour event then this year. That's not always the way it's been run, sometimes a 4+8, but back to the more traditional way, I suppose, of splitting the race. And set to be a much busier session this, although earlier on was pretty busy as well, with 20 cars fighting for track space, but 35 will attack the brand new Mugello asphalt this time. The track resurfaced during 2018. And this is the portion of the entry then, the GT series entry that incorporates A6 Pros, A6 AMs, GT4s, SP2s and the 991 class. And without further ado, let's head down to Nick Damon to offer us some background as far as this part of the championship's concerned. Nick.
Thank you, Johnny. Hello to all those viewers in Viewerland and all those listeners on RSL. We are about to have the main event of the morning, which is, of course, the GT qualifying. We have a plethora of GT cars. The A6 class, known as GT3 elsewhere, has 6, count them, 6 Ferraris, apart from the usual one, as well as a multitude of Audis and Mercedes. It's going to be a battle royal, but don't forget, got GT4 as well, those faster and faster sort of adapted road cars, and of course the other SP classes. It's going to be epic, and it's going to start in about 30 seconds.
Nick Damon then from the pit lane. He'll remain there during the GT Series qualifying session as well, and a really exciting part of the weekend this, because we get to see just how quick some of those A6 AM and A6 Pro cars can go. Well, I was about to say in clear air, but you've got to find that space first of all. There's also 1 or 2 unhappy customers regarding balance of performance, and not just mechanical balance of performance, but also adjustments to turbos. Well, Matteo Magliucelli making his thoughts pretty clearly felt earlier on.
But Matteo is always miserable about something. But yes, it is going to be interesting to see how the Scuderia Praha Ferrari can keep its end up against some very powerful Audi and Lamborghini competition.
I think those comments are consistent with what he was saying in Dubai as well, though.
Absolutely.
And actually, Ferraris in other championships, like the World Endurance Championship, often feel that they are hard done to as far as balance of performance is concerned. But then you've got better fuel consumption a lot of the time in the 488. and it's always there or thereabouts, particularly the Team Prague, the Scuderia Praha one.
Goes with the brand ever since Peter Ustinov's epic Grand Prix of Gibraltar, when Fandango or the Enzo Ferrari character decided that he was going to retire from racing because he was fed up with it, because the rules are always against him. It's kind of characteristic of the brand, and it has to be so. I think the other point, that just to pick up on a more serious note though, Johnny, you say about getting clear air, getting a clear lap with 30-something, 35 cars out there. The other trick is going to be keeping it between the white lines, because I said during the TCE qualifying, I lost count of exactly how many times, how many laps were disallowed because of track limit violations. Yes, the GT3 cars tend to be a bit more stable, but equally you're going to have to make sure that you don't go off the track limits, because otherwise the race direction has already made it very clear that times will be disallowed. So yes, you need to get a clear lap. Yes, you need to keep it between the white lines. Yes, you need to go quickly. You do want to get a good position on the grid, even though it is only the first grid for 2 races, making up 12 hours of racing altogether. But there's a lot to do, so it'll be very interesting to see how it goes. The green flag is actually due already, so a couple of minutes late, but the green flag hasn't yet been shown. It was due to be shown at 12:45, but I think with the cars needing to be scrutineered from touring cars, it kind of made things a little bit more difficult to get things underway on time for this qualifying session. We're advised from the screen that the start of qualifying for GT cars has been delayed, and the
Track repairs, I wonder whether it might
will be confirmed shortly, yes, but there are some track repairs required, which earlier on was because of sausage curbs being dislodged, and if track limits were being strayed over during the TCE qualifying session, that they may need to get some things back into their correct places. Course car going out onto the circuit to do the inspection of the repairs to make sure that everything is as it should be before we get the qualifying underway.
These are almost like sleeping policemen or speed humps that aren't on the track. They're just off, just outside the white lines, the perimeter of the racing area, to discourage you to run out wide, but they're only bolted down. They're not permanent fixtures, because I think they're probably removed when the bikes come here on safety grounds. You get riders falling off motorcycles. You don't want them hitting those. Are they concrete?
I don't think they're made of concrete, but they're
plastic, maybe.
Yeah, they're made of.
No, I think they're possibly metal as well, because they were installed for. I remember a Red Bull Ring year before last, and a lot of the people in the Formula One paddock weren't particularly fans of those. Between the last 2 corners at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. They actually stayed in place in that case, but started to rip crucial aerodynamics off Formula One cars, so didn't go down particularly well with those teams. But I entirely understand why they're there, and those metal sausage curbs having to be refixed, therefore. But that all depends on whether the fixings, the mountings, are still intact. So hopefully this isn't going to be a lengthy delay, but it might be, if you understand my meaning. So 35 cars, as I say, a very decent turnout of A6 machines across the Pro and the AM categories. I'd need to go back through the record books to see whether this is the highest turnout of fastest cars we've ever had here at the Mugello 12 Hours. It's going to run it close.
It certainly is, in terms of the entries at Mugello. I think I'd go along with that, and with the Rinaldi racing team having arrived, with Wochenspiegel team Monschau with their Ferraris, car collection with the number 88, the orange Audi R8 LMS, with the car that effectively won the race at Dubai earlier in the season. Don't forget, we've got Herbert Motorsport as well, and with Barwell Motorsport and Imperiale with their 2 Lamborghinis. I still don't know, there's just something in my bones that tells me that Imperiale has the quickest car out there, but we'll see what happens.
And the reason for that is because it's the older spec.
It's a lighter car, yeah. So
lighter car,
right. I'd say the newer car has a 25 kilo penalty. And in any case, the newer car has more aero. That means that it's more draggy. That means that it's not as quick down the straights. So in terms of a one lap time, then the Imperiale Lamborghini is probably going to be quicker than the Barwell car, although that's not without reckoning with the driving talents of Phil Keane, who is very rapid indeed in the Barwell car. But no, it's going to be very wide open indeed to see how the qualifying session pans out when it does get underway. With at the moment on the live stream we can see pictures coming through Martin van der Pavert down there looking into a hole.
Literally, yes, and trying to work out what exactly to do next. So this is going to pose some problems ahead of another 30 minutes of qualifying.
Yes.
Down in with there we go. Got some overhang. Big weekend for Herberth. You're running two cars for the first time.
Yeah, that's right. It's the first time for us to be there with two cars. So we had two cars at Dubai this year, the Hong Kong Porsche, and now we have a second full season car, the new one, the new GT3R. So everything is new for us, and yeah, we are very proud of that.
And you're actually in both of them, so you're driving both cars.
Yeah, that's right. It's a lot to do, but I'm looking forward for a great race on both cars. Let's see how it goes.
So how are you going to mix your time then between the two machines?
I think I will drive mostly tomorrow, not today. I think it's not a big deal, so all our customers are very fit and yeah, they have a good condition.
Brilliant, thank you, Alfred. So yeah, so it's Alfred is in both cars. Robert's just in the traditional 91 car. The other machine is in 93. And hanging around, I think, and doing some driver coaching is a name from F1 and Le Mans history. It's Christian Klein as well. So I'll try and talk to him either on the grid or during the actual race.
That'll be fun. OK, thank you, Nick Damon, with news from the Herbert Motorsport Garage and stretching our radio microphone technology a little bit there, but I think we got the gist of the interview with Alfred Renauer. I hadn't realised that Alfred was in both cars, but
one of them running as an AM, one of them running as a Pro
but
class
they're both
car.
A6 cars, aren't they?
They're both in A6, but as I say, one with the AM class, one with the Pro class, the 91 car, having run as a Pro class car. In Dubai as well, and then we've got, not to be confused with the 911 and 912 numbered cars, which are both from Porsche Lorient Racing, but they run in the 991 Cup class.
Still lots of scratching of heads and not a great deal of work going on. Now, have you already said what corner this is?
No, I haven't, because I haven't worked out where it is.
Neither have I. This is a section of the green, white and red curbing. The curb's fine, but it's not AstroTurf. It's painted concrete, green concrete, that just beyond the curb there is a hole. Now, that's because a grill's been removed and is propped up along one of the marshal's legs, and they're peering into, the track staff, peering into this hole. Now, whether that grill is fixed normally by something or it's just a drainage method, but it looks like it's partway up a hill, so...
Is it coming up to turn 3?
The difficulty with this track is that turn 2 and 3 and then 4 and 5 are very similar. If the camera angle, and if you're watching on the live stream, if the framing is pretty tight, it's very difficult to ascertain exactly where this is on the circuit, but it's on the approach to a right-hander. If the Alfa Romeo 159 safety car is pointing in the right direction, I've no reason to think that it's not. So that's in the direction of travel. So this is to driver's left, and it's a wide run into a right-hander because there's plenty of tyre marks over that curb, almost as if cars are approaching it well on the curb, and then at the last minute diving to the right-hand side. Quite a fast right-hander as well. It could be turn 3. No, it's the first... oh, it's Arrabbiata. It's Arrabbiata, so that's either 1 or 2. Arrabbiata 2. So on the uphill stretch, we're talking between turns 8 and 9, therefore. And this is a section where you naturally will go out wide, actually, to get the ideal line through the uphill section into Arrabbiata Duo. And with many, many cars using that line, I think it's ripped up a portion just beyond the curb.
Yeah, so rather frustrating for the drivers who have G'd themselves up, ready to go, who are finding themselves now just having to relax and wait until this qualifying session will get underway. It will still run to its full half hour, as far as we understand, and hopefully as soon as the repairs can be completed, then we'll be able to get it underway. And the timing for the remainder of the day is, we're wrong to call it tight, but there isn't a huge amount of leeway in there, because we'll have a 25-minute race for the KTM Crossbow battle after qualifying, and then immediately we need to get onto the grid for part 1 of the 12 hours itself, which is a 3-hour element this afternoon, scheduled to start at 3:30 and run through till 6:30 this evening, when the intervention break can happen.
More metal grate being removed from that area between turn 8 and 9. I think the issue is a section of metal grate has come loose, and now how that's normally bolted down, there's no thread left, so you can't just place a piece of metal grate there, because it's going to get torn up very quickly indeed. The natural racing line into Arrabbiata 2 is to go over that section of curb and potentially the grate as well. And the real puzzle now, you can't just leave an open hole there, so how do you refit that grate? In fact, I think
duct tape over it.
Yeah, strong enough duct tape should last the 30 minutes. What do you reckon? How about the 12 hours? Maybe not. I think what's happened is a section of the curb, which is where the bolts would go in, has broken away. So it's going to need some of that really strong plaster. You know, that I remember there used to be an ad campaign where somebody was hanging loose from the north face of the Eiger, and they just filled in a hole with some of this plaster and just drilled something into it, and it held no trouble. But you've got to source that in the next few minutes, and I don't think this is going to be particularly quick, Paul.
No, although at least work is getting on with it now, and the camera can actually bring us news of what's going on there. Work continuing in order to get this repaired. But it's part of the track accoutrements that are so essential.
Yes.
And but equally, if you're not... if it's not a safe area, then it's just not safe to go racing on it. And just asking the drivers to go, don't go out onto that bit of the track, lads. It just doesn't work. So work continues to try and resolve the situation. There was a situation at Le Mans, wasn't there, last year or the year before, when a drain cover came loose at Tertre Rouge and had to be repaired during the race, and led to a safety car procedure whilst the drain cover was replaced. But that situation, similar to the one that we've got here in Mugello, at least this is happening between sessions. Certainly not something that you would want to happen during the race, because whilst repair work goes on, at least we're not losing competitive time.
True. I don't think this will be a new problem for the Mugello staff, though. I can imagine this has been encountered before, and they'll have to dig out the books to work out how they solved it last time. But there is quite a lot of standing around and wondering what to do next, almost as if perhaps there are some parts being ordered or being sent from the paddock to this area between turns 8 and turn 9. And I suppose in the race, it might have even resulted in a red flag rather than tootling around behind the safety car. So Nick Damon, who's got some musing from the... Have you seen this before, this type of track damage?
Massive amount of downforce, which of course effectively is sucking the car onto the track and therefore sucking up from the surface of the road, has taken out large manholes and of course grates before. Then obviously these cars producing enough downforce to suck out a small grate, as we can see up in the turn 3 or turn 4 areas. But of course there's a famous one where one part of Montoya, I think in China, and I think when it was in Malaysia, that happened to Roman Grosjean. They effectively had their chassis written off by grates coming up, luckily in practice both times, and they're all spot welded. If you actually go and have a look at the manhole covers in Monaco, they're all spot welded down. That's the only way you can stop them, keep them in place when they've got 500, 600 kilos of suction trying to get them off the ground. Now, there's a lot less here, but the first GT3 or A6 car went over there would suck that straight up again. So unless they can screw it down or weld it down, it's not a massive hole. I'm just wondering whether they might just leave it open. And then say, look, it's behind there, and knock yourselves out, boys. Because the fact about it is, if you don't go over it, and it's out of the track, you won't hit it. You can't put a metal piece back in there unless it's mounted down very solidly, because it gets sucked up and break something. But just the hole might be possible.
They're filling it now.
Exactly.
They're filling it with soil or...
I think it's concrete. It's quick dry concrete that they're going to put in, and then see what happens on top of that. I mean, there was a situation as well, which you may remember, Nick, probably before Johnny was born, in 1991 at Montreal. When
you're so kind, Paul. So kind.
The was the World Sports Car Championship in those days, World Sports Prototype Championship, was at Montreal, and Jesus Pereira ripped up a manhole cover that came up through the floor of the car, disappeared off through the back of his Porsche, and split the fuel tank open.
I mean, I did find out Johnny was older than I thought today, so I can confirm he might well remember 1991. But yeah, I mean, they have gone for the let's fit it in. It's not going to rain this weekend, and worry about it on Monday, haven't they?
It needs lots of stomping down, and it might even need one of those pneumatic pounders to...
Theoretically, of course, it's an open hole if it's a drain. So it will go on forever to reach the river. But they probably managed to... They have gone for that. I would expect that's going to need regular maintenance, because it'll get chewed off and it'll become a bigger and bigger divot. And although it may, say the thing about it is, if you don't go over it, there's no reason to go over it, because it's off the track officially, then you'll be fine. But they can't risk that. But it doesn't have a massive hole, so they can keep it relatively in peace. They'll be all right. But
I think you could still get your left side tyres over that section with your right side tyres technically still being on the track.
Oh yeah, no.
It depends how wide the curb is.
You can definitely go onto it, but just in case they just don't. But that's not, as you say, especially in a qualifying session, especially with these drivers, not likely to actually work. But yeah, I mean, the thing is really, unlike normal Creventic series, because we've got these two KTM races in the KTM crossbow battles today, we are running a very tight ship on time. And they really can't afford to delay the crossbow race, because it will then almost launch into the Volderol and the preamble for the actual main race here, the 12 hours of Mugello. So we've already lost, 17, 20 minutes. And I don't think there were 20 minutes from the end of this race to the start of the KTM, end of this to the start of the KTM event. So it's all getting a bit tight. But yeah, the KTM was supposed to go off at 13:35, and that isn't going to happen.
I think I'd agree with that, certainly.
So it could well be the podium will be crashing our pit walk. So it'll be me and Joe fighting each other for attention.
Not for the first time?
No, not for the last time this week either.
I don't know whether there's opportunity, Paul Truswell, of slicing a little bit of time off this 30 minutes.
The race organisers certainly can.
Yes.
It's within.
It is a long qualifying session, not longer than we normally have for these rounds of the 24H series, but you could lose 10 minutes and still there'd be plenty of track time out there to set a pole position lap.
The problem is that everyone will then complain about traffic, but I think my concern is that hole has been filled. I mean, I'm sure there must be some binding agent in there, but as what we've seen on the screen, looks to be fairly loose earth and concrete going in, but I'm sure it will hold. But as Johnny and Nick were saying, we are going to have to be a little bit careful about how long, whether this is a full half-hour session or it does get reduced, with now the time being shown as 13:02 4:30 on the local time, and the half-hour session would then take us well into the gridding up procedure for the crossbow battle.
Well, massive news. One of the marshals, number 572, according to his helmet, is walking, pit lane marshal in his bright orange vest. He's walking down, holding his hand aloft with the 5 fingers and waving at all the drivers and everyone else. So either he's searching for free high fives, or he is telling us that there is 5 minutes. They're going to start in 5 minutes.
Looking for some congratulations to this track
Look at us,
repair.
hey, we repaired. Hey, yeah, no, it's 5 minutes to go.
Okay.
So that was about 30 seconds ago. So it looks like they're going to try and start about 10 past. And they might try and just sneak the whole thing into the whole half hour. It's going to get very tight later on in the day.
I mean, the other alternative, of course, is to shorten the crossbow battle race, which... I don't know whether that...
So they could shorten the Volderol at the front. They were sitting around doing nothing for about 15 minutes.
The Volderol.
When they were sitting on the grid and doing everything else being chatted about, they could easily edit that down to about 6.
So the service vehicles are leaving the area of the crime, turns 8 and 9, as Johnny was describing, one in one direction, one in the other. And so the track is now clear, and I've no doubt that the teams will be being, therefore, readied, and no information on the screens being given to us yet of any reduction in the qualifying session. So let's assume it's still going to be a 30-minute session for
I think we have to.
A6 Pro and AM cars.
I think the teams have to as well.
Absolutely.
And therefore, I mean, maybe more of an impetus to put in a good time early on, just in case there is any time taken away from them. But I really think that bulletin should be circulated before we get going. Everyone needs to know how much time is at their disposal before the clock starts to count down.
And every possibility of a code 60 happening during the session as well. So it does...
What, because of the track repair?
Well, no, just because there's 35 cars out there and somebody's going to throw it into the gravel. What we had 3 code 60s during the TC qualifying, so every possibility of a similar situation happening for the A6 the GT cars.
With almost twice as many cars out for this session, 5 short of that, 20 earlier on, 35 in the GT Series entry, and possibly a slightly unconventional line required then between the 2 Arrabbiatas. Everyone will know about that. They'll know about the delay, and I'm sure team chiefs have communicated that to their drivers, that it might be in their best interest to stay off the curb on the approach to Arrabbiata 2, that uphill blind right-hander that then leads you into Scarperia, the right-hander, and Pelagio, which has been the scene of plenty of track limit abuse coming out of turn 11. But engines being turned on, revs starting to rise now in a highly populated pit lane. And that's even without the TCE series cars. Doors still open. Ambient temperature is comfortable, but you want to try and get air circulation as best as it can be before these drivers then slam the driver's door and their office becomes somewhat more confined and intense. 2 runs, do you think? 2 separate sets of Hankook tyres?
They would have 2 sets available. Whether they're actually going to get to use them, I think we'll have to just wait and see when the track comes to you. Yes, I certainly would expect to see 2 runs. As I said earlier on, the Hankooks, very durable, but they only give their best laps for a couple of laps at best. So 2 laps and then back in, get a new set of tyres, and then do another 2 laps and hope you have clear laps when you're out there. The car collection team ready to go with, I'll guess it's Rick Broikers at the wheel of the number 88 car, the orange car. Car collection with 2 other cars out as well, 33 and 34 running in the AM class car. And the Scuderia Praha Ferrari, the only one of the what was it? It said 6 Ferraris that we have out there, which isn't Rinaldi breathed upon, because there's the 3 official Rinaldi entries, but the 2 Wochenspiegel Team Monschau cars also under the Rinaldi control.
Arrive in Rinaldi trucks,
Although
I think, don't they? Trailers.
The team running them are German, so it's a kind of combination of them both. But as I say, with the Scuderia Praha car, poor old Matteo will be feeling even more hard done by, because there's 5 Ferraris up against his, and as I say, they're all in the Rinaldi. Out of the Rinaldi stable, that's the right way to say it.
Scuderia.
Scuderia, yes.
Scuderia. Rinaldi's a very Italian-sounding name, but I always thought Rinaldi were a German squad.
You may be right.
Yes,
You may be right.
But that's presumably down to the team owner or the person that started the team.
Yes,
And,
the licence is a German licence, so yes, you may be absolutely right.
They are German flagged, but
Yes.
that may not have been always the case, and certainly the Italian tricolore is carried on the Rinaldi Racing livery. Up at the nose on either side, and then it continues to the rear of the car as well, just beneath the side windows. Very smart livery, and one that, for me, is instantly recognisable anyway as Rinaldi Racing from their years in the Blancpain Championship and other GT3 category racing when they've run 458s in the past, but these are all 488s with the extra intakes on the front part of the rear wheel arch to suck that air in. Twin turbocharged 3.9 litre Ferraris these days, of course, rather than the high-pitched scream of the 4.5 litre 458. And they're all ready to go. 2 in the green livery and 1 in the red. Then the Wochenspiegel team Monschau white and black cars. And waiting to join a queue in the fast lane, which isn't going anywhere at the moment because everyone's still waiting for the red light at the end of the pit lane to be extinguished.
And the screen still not telling us when the session is going to start. So I'm guessing that having seen the service vehicles depart from the scene, the clerk of the course, Martin van Pavert, will have gone out to have a look himself to make sure that the repair has been satisfactorily completed. And as just yet, I mean, we're 3.5 minutes away from the end of what should have been the qualifying session. So Nick was saying the amount of time that we've lost on the schedule, pretty much half an hour now, and that is half an hour that we don't really have to make up, with a race still to come between the end of this qualifying session and the start of part 1 of the Mugello 12 hours.
Yeah, it's 1 or 2 furrowed brows, arms crossed, wondering what is going to happen next in the pit lane. Everybody raring to go, and have been for the best part of half an hour now. There's a racetrack out there which is perfectly raceable for 14 of the 15 corners, and the sun is shining in this part of Tuscany. Beautiful day. A little bit warmer than it was yesterday, and the temperature set to continue to increase through the course of the weekend. Actually, Sunday, one day we're not going to be racing here, just about the best, I think, reaching 20 degrees Celsius, but it's going to be 18 or 19 at the height tomorrow. And a very pleasant place to come motor racing. Still early on in the Northern Hemisphere racing season. And an exciting European Championship for the 24H Series anticipated. No new tracks as such, but some returning to the calendar here at Mugello, and the 12 Hours of Brno at the end of May. 12 Hours of Spa is next month, and then the 24-hour races in July and August, just the end of August, and just into September, in fact, at Portimao and Barcelona.
There's a piece of me that likes that idea. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the British Grand Prix used to alternate between Brands Hatch and Silverstone. And I like the idea sometimes that rather than always doing the same thing every year, we do one thing one year, something else the next year, and then go back to the first thing the first year. And very often, I think that can, the trouble with doing everything the same every year is if you end up with too many things happening in your calendar. Whereas, as I say, to do Mugello and Brno one year and then go to Navarra or trying to think where else we lost.
Imola.
Imola, yes. So I think you can you can build that idea of an alternating annual schedule into your planning, and I don't think that, as I say, I don't think that necessarily would be a bad thing. Martin van der Pava is out again in the 159 Alfa Romeo. He probably just enjoys driving it round. He says, "Oh, I'm going to get." Yeah. But he's gone out to have a look, and as I say, he won't allow the session to recommence or to commence until he's satisfied that the track repairs have been adequately completed.
I think he's going to run over this a few times just to see what it's like. The Alpha, yes, is deliberately sent. No, they're going to stop. So I'd misjudged that, and they're going to stop and have a little look again. I don't think Martin is in that car, actually, unless he's in the back, being chauffeured. Some cones now being brought out from the back of the Alpha. Now, this is maybe to indicate to everybody where the repaired part of the track is, because I mean, kind of like when you're on the tee shot on a golf course, you can't tell where the hole is, and at speed it's going to be pretty difficult to work out which bit of the curb has been repaired. So these cones are a visual aid to the drivers to know roughly where this rather hastily cemented area of the track is and try and avoid it. So that's, as you come through Arrabbiata 1, the cones are there just so that everyone knows roughly the part of the curb that they need to avoid.
Yeah, slightly confused by that, I must admit.
I thought the cones were actually going to go on top of where the cemented area was, which would have been a bad decision, I think.
Okay, here's a message on the screen.
Yes.
The qualifying is still delayed, but all team managers are to report to the briefing room in 10 minutes' time. Okay. Rather than getting it underway very shortly, I suspect... No, I won't make my suspicions. I'll allow anybody who's listening to make up their own mind about what's going to happen. But there is going to be a meeting, it would seem, in the briefing room at 1:25, and team managers have been invited to that. And
I can't imagine that's whilst the session's live, though.
No, I suspect we may be looking at a different way of deciding what the grid is going to be.
Yep.
That there will be no qualifying, and we're just going to have a grid drawn either by ballot or by championship positions.
Well, Porsche L'Oréal Racing is still concentrated on getting their drivers into the 911 and the 912 numbered Porsches. So they think something may happen imminently. Perhaps they haven't read the latest message on the screen. But we have got a KTM race to think about, which is also going to be affected by this problem, of course, between turns 8 and 9.
And they're supposed to be out on track within the next 15 minutes. So that's according to the original schedule. And as I say, with the team managers having to be in the briefing room at 1:25 local time, we're certainly not going to have the start of the session before then. And as I say, I would suspect that they're going to discuss having the grid positions set by championship positions
after one race.
They have to get some way, and it makes more sense to me to have that done by championship positions than by taking the order from the free practice session, which would be the other alternative. But I suspect that we may not have a qualifying session, but we do have some news from Nick Damon down in the pits. Nick, what can you tell us?
With Baz Kooten with his Porsche team, of course, he's also got the TCR team. I forgot the number. So, what's your Porsche number, Baz?
991.
Well, that's neat. How did I forget that number? You're looking at your phone. You've got the same information as us. So, just give.
Exceeding track limits, and I think the organization will announce some penalties, or maybe if I see the timing it will be changed, or maybe there will no qualifying.
Yeah, it's looking like we have lost so much time on a very tight schedule. The only leeway they've got is about half an hour to the curfew at 6:30. But so you're feeling perhaps we might lose qualifying then?
It would have been strange if the GDs will not have a qualifying and the touring cars will have. And actually, it looks like the touring cars have created a problem by cutting the track limits. So we'll hear it in the briefing.
Is there any, kind of contingency for this? For example, if a qualifying session was rained off, they used the positions from free practice this morning. Do you know there's anything in the regulations about that?
No, it's not in the regulations. So decision will be made by the clerk of the course.
So if qualifying doesn't go ahead and you're on the grid in whatever order, will that affect the way you approach the race? Are you trying to learn anything in this half hour, or is it just to get a fastest lap?
Actually, a qualifying is getting the fastest lap, of course, as it's the starting position for the race. But as you know, it's a 12-hour race. It's not a sprint race, and position is it's good to have a good position, but it's not mandatory, as our NKPP guys always prove. They start from the back of the grid, and always they end up somewhere in the front.
And you got more new tyres as well.
Yeah, that saves. But we can go on with the tires from the qualifying for the stint in the race. But it's not for saving tires here.
Baz, thank you very much. So yeah, we aren't overly sure exactly what's going on, but obviously it looks like the big losers maybe Hankook here, boys. A few tyres not sold, but the lack of activity, given the fact that the hard thing we do have a second KTM race. I'm sure they won't want to postpone, and the curfew is 6:30. We have a half hour extra. We could extend things. We are running till... we're running 6:30. That is the stop. So I'm not sure we can run to 7 o'clock. But it really is looking like they're going to have to cancel the qualifying or postpone it, which will be interesting because, the free practice was not necessarily indicative of everyone's times. People were trying different things, running different drivers. So... And also, at round 2, there aren't really championship standings to run from either, especially with the variance of drivers entering the same car number. So this could be an interesting one. Perhaps I'll come on the grid and everyone draw lots. That'd be great, wouldn't it? We'll just draw lots, see who's first.
It wouldn't be the first time that's happened either, Nick.
No, no.
I would go for championship positions, but...
yes, but I suppose this is the first round of the European Championship, and I think the point that Nick makes is a good one. We've got teams that didn't necessarily have the budget to go to Dubai and are fully focused on the European Championship, so they're here for their first race of the year and aren't anywhere in the Championship standings.
We need to send Heinhoff to the team managers meeting at 13:25. It is.
Well, he'll be back from his lunch break at that stage, and there won't be a KTM. Well, I assume there won't be a KTM race to commentate on at that point.
So
the problem is now, though. Okay, let's not knock on the head qualifying, which at the moment looks likely. We've got the start of the race to concentrate on later on today, and therefore time is tight for repairing that problem at the outer turns. And what if they can't repair it today, and it's going to have to be an overnight job? What do you do? Stick a speed limit into that part of the circuit? You couldn't possibly do that.
The technology exists to fix the problem on the track. I was a little bit confused about the positioning of those bollards, but it may well
because you thought they were going to cone off a section of the circuit, or the outer bit of the circuit?
They seem to be purely sighting bollards that they've put into position there. Speaking
of Heinhoff coming back from lunch break, Heinhoff's come back from his lunch break.
But he's supposed to be at a team managers meeting.
Well,
he's our team manager.
Well, I hope not. We're all in trouble if that's the case. The general consensus from speaking to the team managers before they went to the team managers meeting is that qualifying may not happen, and therefore grid positions will be set from the practice session.
From the free practice session.
Free practice session, yeah.
Well, that's all they've got to go on. As I say, there's as I see it, three
There was
options.
a rock, paper, scissors championship going on outside the hospitality.
There's the result of the Dubai race, which
but
is
as I
fairly
say,
irrelevant.
now thinking about it, I mean, the Ferraris that are out on the apron, were any of those at Dubai?
No,
so how can you split those for a grid? Because they're all on 0 points.
So it has to be the free practice session.
Yeah.
Has to be. And there's an issue, of course, with the circuit curfew, which is 6:30, I think.
Yes, as Nick was describing to us a few moments ago.
Yeah.
So we can't run beyond 6:30. The race itself scheduled to start at 3:30 this afternoon, and a KTM crossbow battle scheduled to take place from 1:30.
Yes, those cars should be rolling out on the grid right now.
Onto the grid. But certainly I think the team managers meeting will be getting underway. One of us has to go, so I'll go.
Okay. Well, Paul will find out what the discussion topic is there. As far as qualifying is concerned, that might be it, folks. And
Well,
we may draw this broadcast towards an end, but I mean, we need to get full confirmation.
Is Nick still down in the pits?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And
might be worth trying to get hold of some of either the team personnel who are still down there.
Well, we've spoken to Baz Cooten.
I heard that, yeah.
Baz reckons that there's nothing in the regulations telling us how the cars should be gridded up if they can't be qualifying. You're telling me not to lean back on my chair, aren't you, John?
Yes.
I thought that was code for something or other.
Yeah.
Yes.
Plastic rear legs are
Rather
deforming
susceptible.
slightly.
Fair enough.
I don't want to see you crack your head off the floor. Disappointment, but this is one of the reasons that track limits were being enforced earlier on. I've got a strong suspicion that the other part of the team managers meeting is we're going to really cane people for track limits. Joe Bradley's joined us as well, and
but it's drainage, and I know not designed to run over, but the cars are still, by the way, out on the apron, and one or two are being pushed back into garages. I reckon you could easily get your left side tyres onto that metal grating while still having the right tyres on the track. So
we just need to put some cones out that restricts the movement onto that part of the track. And if
well, the cones
tyre bill.
Hit a cone, if you hit a cone, then you incur a penalty or something.
No, put a tyre bill there.
Or a tyre bill there.
You hit it, you're going to rip the front of your car off.
I think we've got to come up with some ideas about we're going to form this grid and a ballot.
I think
it's free practice.
Tossing coins.
It's free practice.
I think we need to work out whether this race is going to start on time, because if they are intending on putting more significant repairs in, you're thinking about concrete drying.
And which part of the track is this, Johnny?
Arrabbiata.
Arrabbiata 1 or 2?
Between the two corners. So
is that on the outside?
You come through Arrabbiata 1, you naturally run out wide.
Yes.
It's at that point that you're running wide, where the grating has come up, and then you run into 2. So it is the natural racing line. And
it's not just a little square grate, it's the long grate that runs on the outside of the curb.
We're only talking probably 8 inches in length, and it's quite narrow, and it's there for drainage. So you've got the white line that delineates the edge of the track. You've got a fairly wide curb, and then the next thing
to be spot welded down
is the drainage grate.
We've had this
spot welded to what though? Concrete?
Well, there should be a metal.
There'll be a metal
seat
around
it sits into.
There's a concrete lip. There's a concrete lip, which is where the thread is, I think, where the bolts go in. And the problem is the concrete's broken away.
It's hard to judge what we're looking at, isn't it? Without, have you had pictures of it?
Yes. Yeah. And 5 blokes peering into a hole for about 20 minutes.
There's a hole at the exit of Arrabbiata 1. Officials are looking into it.
I hadn't realised it was perhaps the fastest sweeping two double right-handers on this whole track.
Yeah, great.
And putting cones there is not going to rectify the problem if you just get it a little bit slightly wrong.
News again from Nick about cars.
Yeah, at this point, there's people now kind of sort of giving up in a kind of this isn't going to happen sort of way. There are plenty of cars still just desperate to get out, like on the track day where it's the last session of the day and someone's gone off and you're waiting for them to take away an ambulance and just desperate. Go on, you've broken both legs. Get in the ambulance. But obviously down here there is no information. Everyone is completely confused. I just a quick word with Christian Franken, who's sporting a very nice new short haircut. Christian,
low drag.
Disappointed to miss qualifying as it appears it's going to be?
Yeah, well, we would. Well, I would think we would be somewhere in the front. That's what I was hoping for. Yesterday, in free practice, we had a good car, so I was hoping for a qualifying and bringing out a good lap.
If we have to go, as it may seem we do, from free practice, obviously you lost quite a bit of free practice, didn't you, with the gearbox sensor issue, so you're at a bit of a disadvantage to begin with.
Well, we tested yesterday, so we know the car and we know what to do, and we have a good setup. But you want to do qualifying, and that's why you're a racer, to do the one flying lap and see what you can do. So it looks like that we now go from 0 to the race. So we will need to see what happens.
Normally we see either you or Kenneth start the car, and normally you're 6th or 7th on the grid. If this is likely you're starting a lot further back, will you start with one of the gentleman drivers to get their time out of the way whilst they're mired? Or is it more important to have a pro in if you're further back?
Well, it depends on what times maybe they do the times from free practice and take that as the qualification. And then I think we're 9 or 10 or something. So, but I think we always start with the pro. That's for us, for our point, the safest idea to start, and then we will see what happens after that. But it's a little bit different strategy now, so we need to see.
Well, as the other cars are, well, thank you, Christian. As the other cars are wheeled back, the summer's enjoying the sunshine. Still a few cars insisting they can get out once the ambulance has gone. I think it's
yes,
quite
you're
likely it's
still
not going
talking
to happen.
metaphorically there,
Yes,
we should say.
yes. Oh, no, I've been there in real life, sitting there going,
Motorcycle.
did you have to break your arm at 4 o'clock?
Yes, just when we all want one last blast of the evening.
Suggestion is from the Creventic staff that qualifying's still going to take place.
What happens to the KTM race?
I don't know. How early can we start racing in the morning?
I would think this is what the deliberation that's going on in the meeting, and we're going to address the situation down at...
Right, what time do we have to? We have to start. If we have to finish by 6:30, let's work backwards from there. Okay.
Yeah.
So if we have to finish by 6:30, that means
we have to do 3 hours of the 12 tonight.
Unless we start earlier tomorrow morning, if we can. But then again, is there an early morning curfew? Don't know. Let's assume we try and stay 3 and 9. Right. That's the first thing that you kind of have to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that means you have to be getting the cars away by really no later than 3:15 this afternoon. That gives you a 10-minute
rolling
team
off.
manager briefing's just finished, by the way.
Right, we'll get an update on that. So that means gridding the cars up at 2:45 or thereabouts. It is now only 1:30.
Yeah.
So we have got time to get a half an hour qualifying session in and a 25-minute KTM race still. Mm-hmm. But with every moment that goes by, it's getting tighter.
Well, his 30-minute session doesn't have to be 30 minutes.
No, that's true.
So you could change that to 20.
Yep.
Little gains, I realise, but...
No, but important. The incremental gains at this point are tremendously important, Johnny, because it just gives you time to change things over to make sure that the KTM battle runners and riders get their race, because that will be part of the thought process here as well. However, before all of that, so logistically and time-wise, gentlemen, I think we're all right. Before all of that, you've got to make sure that that area of the track is safe.
Yes, I think it's safe. It's just a question of whether the repairs will hold. And what they've done is just dropped spadefuls of, well, Paul Truswell reckoned it was quick-drying concrete. I don't think it was. I think it's just some sort of soil or fine mixture that's been dropped into the hole. But as Nick pointed out, it's a drainage trough. So eventually that's just going to seep further and further down, and we're still going to be left with a hole because it'll just work its way underneath the metal grating. That's no doubt a quick fix. Can they do anything more substantial in the time allowed? Because the timetable, the schedule is shuffling all the time, and we're losing time for the track action. They're obviously also losing time for the repairs. The message on the screen about team managers has now disappeared because the briefing has taken place, and one man that was at the briefing is Paul Truswell. So what do you know?
I had to fill in a form because I was late. It would seem we're going to have a full half hour of qualifying. Mm-hmm. We're then going to have a KTM crossbow race.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have 3 hours of the 12 hours of MUGELLO.
Good.
And when we've done that, it may well be after 6:30.
We've just talked about that. It doesn't have to be. It means you've got to get the race started by 3:15. Takes you half an hour before that, takes you to 2:45.
Estimated start of qualifying is now 1:15, by the way, so 1:45 here in Italy.
Right, so 1:45, that'll take you to 1:15.
At 2:15.
At 2:15. And that means you're going to have to shorten up the KTM race or have them basically sitting ready to go straight at the end of the...
But the one thing that Nick and you said, there was a curfew at 6:30.
Yeah.
That doesn't appear necessarily to be an absolute curfew.
Okay.
There is flexibility to run beyond 6:30.
Right.
As I say, even if we don't get the 3 hours of the 12 today underway at 3:30, we could still run that full for 3 hours. The important point of the meeting, and I should stress this, is that the team managers have been told, asked very politely, to tell their drivers to stay off that bit of the curbing at turn 8 where the bollards are indicating it. And it's one of those things, a bit like a naughty schoolboy. It's your own pitch you're spoiling. If you do run over the curbs, you're going to pull up the dust, you're going to make the hole again, and it's going to get it worse. Yeah. Whilst they can fix it overnight, more permanently, they can't fix it now. So they're relying on the drivers to be sensible and not use that bit of the curbing. That's the key thing to say, is that you need to stay off that bit of the curbing, and that's what the bollards are in the gravel for, not at the point of where the actual problem is, because if you put the bollards at the point where the actual problem is, somebody's going to hit those bollards and you're just going to have another problem. So it makes sense to have the bollards in the gravel, alert the drivers to where the problem is, tell the drivers, if you use the curbs, you're going to lose the 3 hours of the race tonight.
Yeah, but you need to remember that on the way into Arrabbiata, though, because you're fully committed by that point where you find the cones. So it's a question of thinking, we're not on the normal line here, at the normal pace either. But, I mean, once you've been through that corner a few times at the new speed and the new trajectory, then it'll be fine. But particularly during qualifying, when we're talking very fine margins indeed, this is going to be a learning process, isn't it, for the first few laps?
Joe Bradley's just said, in what world do they think team managers have any control over what the drivers actually do out on track? They can tell them.
Yes, but, I mean, there's a certain element of this that I actually find refreshing, because Martin van der Paver can go up there, stand in front of everybody, say, this is what I need you to do. And if you don't do it, then we're not going to have a racetrack that we're going to be able to race on. So, he's not kind of giving them a punishment. He's just explaining to them the facts of the matter and the consequences that might occur.
If he didn't tell anybody to stay off the curb, and everyone's going to be going, well, why didn't you tell us to stay clear of it? So they have to, as an official point of view,
that's absolutely right,
do something. What else could they summon all the drivers into the briefing room? I think the best way of doing it is one driver per one member of staff per car or per team. And they've done that.
Which is I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think you can lay this on the doorstep of the organisers in any way, shape or form. It's number one, it's a circuit problem. Number two, it's a track limits problem, if you want to call it that. And all you can do now is mitigate it and try and move on. And that's exactly what the guys are doing, and I think they're to be applauded for that. But ultimately,
this won't be a new problem that they're encountering here. I mean, Nick has told stories about drain covers coming loose at Formula One circuits in the past. I'm sure it happens fairly regularly here. Once a year, perhaps, I don't know. But the circuit furniture only has a sort of lifespan. There's natural wear and tear that's going to affect it, and there'll be ways of fixing it up, but not in a sort of 2-hour period when you've got live sessions around it as well.
But you should be able to do something overnight.
That's what they said. They did undertake to do something overnight, so that will happen. And I think the other thing is that the nature of GT cars, whether they're TCE division or the full spec GT3s, big wide tyres with lots of lateral movement do tend to shift things that bike tyres don't shift. And this is probably, I don't know what other car racing is held here, but this is probably around the fastest lateral loads that you're going to get here. But no, I mean, the good news is that, as I say, Martin van der Pavert has explained the situation. We are going to have a qualifying session, and there is no suggestion that we're going to lose any of the activity of the day. It's just that it's all going to get pushed back a bit.
Yeah, so that's better than most of the teams thought, I think, for a period of time. Certainly some of the drivers.
Absolutely, and I wasn't quite sure how we were going to get through it, but it does seem that we are going to have, as I say, the rest of the programme for today going ahead, provided that drivers do what they're told and stay clear of that curb.
Good luck with that. Drivers, actually, in fairness,
been there, John, so you had a team manager.
In this series, drivers are probably more likely to do as they are told than in many other series.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of the series, and we've had a long chat at lunchtime, actually, with a number of people in the paddock who I'm not going to name, who have said one of the reasons they come here is because of the attitude of the organisers, because of the attitude and the respect that the drivers have for each other. I've experienced that firsthand, and with virtually no exceptions, the pro drivers, and there are some very pro drivers here, understand that they are here as guests. They're the guests here. This is not a series for them, with respect. It's a series for the people who aren't pro drivers, and they are told that and reminded that, and as I say, with virtually no exception, most of them understand that and drive accordingly. And when you get into fully pro series with manufacturer involvement, with livelihoods on the line, and it's a cut and thrust situation, like at the VLN, for example, the guys at the front of that field are manufacturer drivers, and at that point they can't give anything, because those races now are sprint races from the moment you take your thumb off the pit lane speed limit until the moment it goes back on again, and therefore you take slightly more considered risks. You are driving flat out more of the time, and traffic you have to deal with in a very different way, and many drivers have told me that. That is not the case here.
No, absolutely. And I think it's one of those situations where if they don't behave themselves...
Engines have started, by the way, Paul, so we can't be too far away.
We're 4 minutes away from the start of the qualifying session. But they do have to behave themselves now and do exactly what has been described for them. I mean, they get a sighting lap. They're not going to be on it the first time they go past the area. They've driven around already during the free practice session. They've driven around it already. They know where that problem is, because they'll have probably even felt that drain beginning to move. And it is only a cover, but it's a cast iron cover which has come loose, and the gap has been filled, as you've probably said, with soil, not soil and stones, not with concrete, but it is going to be welded in place overnight. What they can't do is to weld anything in there now. But it's down to the teams to be sensible about it. However, that's going to make it still just as exciting.
Of course.
And we might not be looking at quite the ultimate lap times that we were going to be looking at, but nevertheless, it's going to be a jolly exciting qualifying session coming up.
Well, drivers are in the cars now as well, Johnny. Nick Damon is still lurking.
He's reading his notes.
Down in the pit lane.
I can see him there on the screen. He was reading his notes.
Nick, looks like this is going to get started at the time.
Yes.
That's been advertised.
I was just reading what Peter sent us, which is the revised timetable for the day.
Which is?
Okay. The key point is that the cars will leave the pit lane at 3:30, and the race will start at 4 till 7. So there's going to be a lot less time for Volderol on the grid. In fact, there may not even be time for grid walk, which is very disappointing for me, though I'll try and talk to a couple of people. So they're going to shorten that element. The KTM race is starting at 3, so that finishes at 3:25, and then they immediately open the pit lane.
Yes.
The 12-hour race, get those cars round. Realistically, they'll be rolling off the grid at about 53. So they get a very quick start. So the chances are, you're going to miss out on the grid walk, but we will get the racing, which is the real reason people are here, apart from me.
Right.
All it takes, of course, is for one car to go out wide there, and everyone's just going to follow suit. Oh, you're not going to stick to the rules, then I'm not either. And but it should be self-penalising in a way. I don't know what's being shown at me now. Oh, right, okay.
Nick's just mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yes, he did, about communication from Creventic. And thank you to Peter Fry and others for keeping us in the loop about the new timings.
Totally correct. So can you go through that again, Johnny, then, the new timings?
1:45 is the scheduled start for this qualifying session. We're at
Half an hour.
1:43 now. It will be for 30 minutes, so that's a finish at 2:15. And then the crossbow battle is timed for 1,500 hours through till 15:25. And then the pit lane will open for the Mugello 12 hours at 3:30 till 4, and then the start of the race will be 4 o'clock, and the intervention for the Mugello 12 hours 7 o'clock. Is that exactly what Nick was saying? Because I was engaged with other things at the time.
No,
excellent.
So that is the revised schedule, and that of course depends on circuit being fit to race on, which depends upon driver behaviour, as our race director told us during the team manager's briefing. Counting down to the green flag should be in about 5 seconds time. We'll be underway with, I think this is going to be good, 6 Ferraris, 3 Mercedes, Porsche, the 2 Lamborghinis, and that's just the A6 class, without having to worry about the remainder of the GT4s, with the number 1 Aston Martin having, we saw on the screen, trundled down the pit lane. Nico Verdonk, the nominated driver to do the qualifying for that. So we've kind of get this qualifying session underway exactly 1 hour late. So if we can get to the end of the day, and we've only delayed it by half an hour, we've just caught back half an hour. So this is the outlap, and an opportunity for the drivers to sight those bollards in the gravel.
I would suggest push now, though, because there's no telling how long this session is actually going to be. I know it's been billed as 30 minutes, but if it starts to break up at Arrabbiata, might be called short by 10 minutes or more.
No wonder people were scrambling for a place at the front of the queue as well, because I think you want to be out, you want to bank the lap in as quickly as possible. I mean, ultimately, as we were saying earlier on, how much, Paul, does grid position matter? Well, probably in the first part of the race it does matter here.
Yeah, well it doesn't, does it? Because you've anyway got the intervention break, and during the intervention you're going to have everybody put back into kind of nose to tail a grid formation again for the second part of the race tomorrow. So you know, I would say it is more important to get a good finishing position at the end of the 3 hours than it is to get a good grid position for this. So I think the drivers, though, who was it we were talking to? It was Alan James, wasn't it, who's talking about bragging rights. A lot of it is to do with bragging rights rather than anything else. But we'll see what kind of times we get. 47s, 48s, I would suggest are going to be what's required to get up into the front rows of the grid. Rick Breukers aboard the number 88 car collection Audi, the orange car, but he's not leading the way across the line at the moment.
No, he's not. This is going to be a bit of a dash. 88 car collection goes past the Arrabbiata. Well, they've almost made a little square out of cones there to mark the area. Is that a pen, Arrabbiata, then?
So to speak.
I knew I would get that in somehow at the weekend. They've made it
really
easy for me. I've been trying to shoehorn that in somewhere.
It's they're trying to alert the drivers to the area where there is the issue on the track.
Yeah. And that car collection, bright orange and black Audi number 88 then. Out on the circuit at the moment. And looking for slowing down, speeding up, getting a little bit of heat in the tyres. Weaving back and forth does very little to heat the tyres. It cleans them up a little bit. little if nothing to heat them up. You need more consistent lateral loads to do that, but actually braking and accelerating and braking, getting the heat from the brakes through the wheels to the tyres actually does a little bit more in terms of getting them up to temperature and pressure. Rinaldi Racing 69 Ferrari going through the first corner. Haven't had any representative laps yet, although Christian Frankenhout is pushing quite hard.
Yeah, of course, the out lap isn't going to count for anything at all, and you'll only get counted once you start and finish the lap time on the track. But, so we've got the Robert Renauer out at the wheel of the number 91 Herbert Motorsport Porsche.
Yeah, the 69 Rinaldi Racing car, by the way, Steve Parrow behind the wheel of that car, the bright green machine. Kirchhoff, Max Edelhoff in the car collection 34. So who was in the 88 then? Oh, it was Rick Breukers, of course. Of course it was Rick Breukers, yes.
Dan Keilwitz at the wheel of the 22 Ferrari. David Perel at the wheel of the 21 Ferrari. Tom
56.9. Andrea Montermini does a 56.9, then straight down to a 53.2 for Tom Onslow Cole, who puts a great opening bid in with the fastest second two sectors. But there's a quick time coming in from the number 77 here, Paul. The Barwell Motorsports.
Patrick Chiala aboard.
Yeah.
That car. I was expecting them to put Keeney into it, but Patrick Chiala is doing the qualifying at the moment. And
keep an eye on that one then.
But we're going to be into the 40s before long.
Onslow Cole goes even quicker in the 16 SPS car. Rinaldi Racing to second. By the time I've said that, that's all changed. 48 car. No, that's the second of the Rinaldi Racing cars, isn't it? Yes. And that is the... Is that Rory Pentinen at the wheel?
Rory Pentinen driving the 48 car does a 55 dead. So, I mean, they're quick, but they're not quick enough yet.
But at the moment, it's as much about the order that they're in as the times, because if something goes wrong and we have to stop this, Tom Onslow Cole is top of the shop. Through he will come in a moment or two. The number one, Aston Martin, going through traffic with Nico Verdonk at the wheel. Second in GT4 at the moment for that all-white new Vantage GT4. First time we've seen that in this championship. It cuts a dash, that car. It really does. Tom Onslow Cole did improve, came down to a 50, but is quickly beaten by Engslebert, Koala and Postiglione going through. First under 150 there.
Yeah, that's the Imperiale Lamborghini, the number 32 car for Postiglione, 149.360. Tom Onslow Cole into the 48 now, John, 148.143 for Tom Onslow Cole in the SPS Automotive Mercedes. Frankenhout third in the Hoffer Racing Mercedes. So it's Mercedes, Lamborghini, Mercedes, Lamborghini, Mercedes. The top five at the moment. Where are all the Ferraris? Well, sixth fastest at the moment. Andrea Montermini at the wheel of the number 47 Rinaldi Racing Ferrari. And Rory Pentinen in number 48 is eighth fastest with a 154.284. Malicelli with the Scuderia Praha Ferrari currently only ninth with his best time of 155.325. 7.5 minutes gone, and we're getting messages already, John, saying that lap times are being disallowed for exceeding track limits, but at turn 11, which was one of the areas that was the left-hander at Pelagio. It's the exit of that corner, I think, that
correct.
Is where they run
that is
wide.
a good place to gain time there. Pelagio is a local town, made famous in recent years by the fact that one Gordon Sumner and his wife live there. Gordon Sumner's wife is Trudy Styler, because he's known better as Sting. They've got a place up there, apparently. Nice place to be.
Postigliano had a time disallowed, so 48.132 is his best. Now, is that the one that's been disallowed? We'll have to wait and see whether it gets taken off the screen or not.
Right.
But potentially that time, 1:48.132 for Postiglione is going to be disallowed. Tom Onslow Cole has been clean. He's not got any messages on the screen about his time in the Mercedes, the SPS car.
Very fast in the first sector, Tok. Very fast.
48.143, his best. 48.6 for Christian Frankenhout, and he is also safe of any track limits offences. Malicelli has a couple of laps disallowed.
Postiglione, he's carving his way through the traffic. This looks like he's racing to the finish in a lap or two's time, the way he's jinking back and forth through traffic. The green and black Imperiale racing car. And this is a 2018 version of the Huracan GT3. And it is the GT3, not the Huracan Cup car, which has a slightly different body kit.
Yes, I think
track limits there. Be very careful. Very careful indeed.
The trick for the Imperiale team is going to be, certainly Postiglione can do the time, so can Galbiati, but the Czech driver, Jaromir Juric, it'll be interesting to see whether he's going to be able to be as quick.
Let's head down to Nick Damon, who's down by car number 2 or 3, the JR Motorsport BMW M4 Silhouette. Nick, what's the problem?
Well, I'm outside garage 14. It's not moving, and he should be in garage 2. So he rolled to a stop. Here come his team. They've walked down the count of, oh, God, we've got to push the car back up the hill way. He's slightly uphill towards pit out. So the car just died. The Ward Schleiss, Marco Verhagen and Mr. Weering car. And they're now pushing it back up again, but it's dead stick. So whether they under-fueled it or it suddenly picked up a problem, but they have stopped it, there's nothing falling out of it. It's not leaking in any way, no smoking, just not running, John.
Thank you, Nick. Nick Damon down there in the pit lane. Andrea Montermini was very quick early on in the Rinaldi Racing Ferrari 488 GT. Just has had to go through past the Porsche. One of the new Porsches, and clearly wasn't happy. Hand came out the driver's side window. I don't think he was saying thank you there. There was a bit of exasperation from Montermini.
Tom Onslow Cole, meanwhile, is into the 46s, John. A 1:46.828 for the SPS Automotive Mercedes.
And he's down below 26 seconds for the first sector. He has been super quick in that first sector all the way through this run.
Here comes Malicelli. He's up to 4th now in the Ferrari. So 2 Mercedes first and second, then the Lamborghinis, Postigliano in 3rd. Now the Scuderia Praha Ferrari comes up to 4th place, but it gets pushed back to 5th because the Lamborghini from Barwell comes up to 3rd now. Patrick Kuyala, 48.073.
And having had an issue with another slower driver, Montermini absolutely blocks one of the Mercedes behind him. So he's going to get a bit of a hand signal as well, I presume. That was really poor driving by Montermini there. He was trying to find a bit of space, but in fact, no, he loses the back of the car. That was the problem. And then dawdles down the middle of the road, right in front of Mercedes-Benz number 16, with Tom Onslow Cole behind the wheel of the Richard Mille sponsored car.
Yeah, that's the SPS Automotive. That's a car that used to be sponsored by Cool Aviation. I thought Cool was still involved in SPS Automotive, but certainly Richard Mille, far larger written on that car than Cool Aviation is. So that may be a change of sponsorship deal for the SPS Automotive team.
So it's SPS AMG GT3 from Hoffa Racing AMG GT3, then 2 Huracans, a 19 from an 18, that's Barwell from Imperiale. And if you prefer the car numbers, that's 16, 10, 77 and 32, with Victor Postiglione sitting as the... So it's 2 A6 AMs leading from 2 A6 Pros. Yes, it is that order, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Yeah, absolutely. If we go down the other classes, 991, Peter Terting in the number 980 Porsche leads from the 912 in second and the 991 in third. Harry Hilders is still out there. But Peter Terting's gone through as Malicelli now goes through into second overall.
And very briefly, Rick Breukers took second overall as well in the car collection Audi. Rick is just ahead of Malicelli on the track, went through and did a 47.768 to take second.
So Postiglione now down to sixth because Koala's gone through as well and got up to fifth.
Is that because Kuyala's
lost the lap? Possibly.
No, Kuyala's into the pits. Postiglione's time has, I'd say he's had times disallowed, but it's not been his quickest.
Number 11 going long. Malicelli misses the chicane on the far side of the circuit. He's gone through the tyre barrier and now comes into the... Now, where's he gone? He's into the...
I think he's come into the
pit lane. Yes, he went in the pit lane there, excuse me.
A rather unusual route into the pit lane.
So 991 we've told you about. He's gone into fuel. That's what he's done. So he's going to get a splash of fuel with 15 minutes to go. He's halfway through the session. Let me do the other classes. SP2 is the 202 that leads. That is the GR Motorsport BMW M3. In GT4, Nico Verdonk is in the pits. In the number 1 Aston, which leads its category. So that's the other category. Still out there, Rick Breukers in the 88, coming to the end of the lap. No, he dives in and then goes in for fuel as well, I think. I'll keep an eye on that. Yes, he has. So Tom Onslow Cole, Matteo Malicelli and Rick Breukers, first, second and third, having a little top-up and then presumably, Paul, throwing a set of new Hankooks on and going for another go. So they've split this session into two parts.
Johnny and I were saying, whilst we were playing for time earlier on, what's the best strategy? Paul. And we were saying exactly that the strategy would be to put two sets of tyres on, refuel in between, run as light as you possibly can for the two-part sessions. And at the time, we were speculating whether it might only be a 15-minute session or a shorter time session. But it seems to be that certainly the top three all choosing exactly the same strategy. Christian Frankenhout is into the pits now as well with the Hoffa Racing Mercedes, and the only one who stayed out is Kuyala in the Barwell Lamborghini.
Klaus Angerhofer, who's behind the wheel of the KTM GT4 number 217, really finding trouble getting any grip out there, which is unusual, and he's already done a race today. Spoiler alert, but he won the overall and the GT4 version of the KTM Crossbow Battle, and he's got a few people he's competing against in that True Racing KTM with him in the big race. I just wonder if the way the track surface is heating up, it's getting a little bit greasy out there. We might see when the new tyres go on a little tyre pressure change as well. Lamborghini number 32 in the pit lane and getting a little look under the front cover. Not the, I suppose it's not really the bonnet.
I thought it was in here earlier.
Yeah, but the other guy said, "Don't worry, that's the Imperiale racing car. Don't worry, I've found another one. There's a spare in the back."
Spare in the back. Thank you. What was it? You were saying about the spoiler alert as well with Dangelhofer with the KTM. He's got another race to do straight after this qualifying session.
Exactly.
But you've already spoiled it for us.
Yeah.
Because you've told us he's going to win it.
He won the first one.
Malicelli is still in the pits. Onslow Cole back out with the Mercedes number 16. Patrick Kuyala has taken the Barwell Lamborghini back out again, and we've also got Postiglione out in the Imperiale Lamborghini, which you were just describing having its pit stop. Charles Espenlaub going very well in the CP Racing Mercedes. He is in 7th place overall.
And aerodynamic adjustments down in the pit lane. Nick Damon has the news.
Matteo Malicelli in the number 11 is having a rear wing adjustment. Now, I've arrived here when it was already loose, so I have no idea whether they've gone for more or less wing, but they are just tightening up the Allen bolts as we speak on the right-hand side, and they have given it a different angle of attack. Alan Bolt's the sprinter from Jamaica from 1974.
Yes, excellent, very good. Very good indeed. You can ask them in your best Italian whether there was more or less.
Let's find out. More More wing or less wing?
Les wing.
Thank you very much. There we are, you see? Bit more straight
good.
line speed.
Yeah, they're looking for more straight line speed. Remember that they were pointing out that they'd had a balance of performance change on their boost and lost they reckon about 15 horsepower, so they're looking for a bit of extra top speed down the front straight, and they reckon their drivers have got used to the track now, so they should be able to drive the twisty bits, the wiggly bits, without all that downforce. So gradually, it's not unknown to do that, in fairness, as you go through the weekend to wind a bit of downforce off. What you've got to do is get it to the right spot so that you don't catch your drivers out.
You've got to have it comfortable for all your drivers, and
all your drivers,
whilst
that's
Malicelli
key.
may be able to handle it. It's not quite so clear whether or not
he's going for pole, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ferrari on pole. I'll put 20,000 on the gate tomorrow.
Tom Onslow Cole, I have to say, has done a remarkable job with the SPS Mercedes. A 46.8 is quicker than any GT3 car has ever been around Mugello before, so good performance from Tom Onslow Cole. And I have to say, I thought it was going to be a battle between Rick Breukers in the car collection Audi. He's third at the moment with a 47.768. And I still think that Postiglione may have something up his sleeve in the Imperiale Lamborghini. He's currently languishing just a touch in 6th place, but we've still got 10 minutes of the session to go.
It's definitely greasy out there. I've just seen the Race Union 987 Porsche, which is leading the Porsche class. Yes, it is the 991 class. Felipe Fernandez Laser in that car. Totally drifting the car out of some of the corners, and if a Porsche is struggling to get grip out there, then everyone is struggling to get grip out there, because when things get a bit iffy, the old rear engine Porsche, and that is the traditional engine layout on that car with the engine behind the gearbox, that means things are tricky, to say the very least.
Felipe Laza, immensely accomplished driver, and I would imagine he's actually, I was going to say, doing it on purpose. He's enjoying himself out there. But
I was completely controlled. I should say that, yes.
Yeah, he will be aware that even if it is completely controlled, it's not necessarily the quickest way around the track.
Crossing the line right in front of us now, 224 is the KTM. It's the RTR Projects KTM crossbow for the Czech driver squad, Czech team, in fact.
In GT4, it's now Michael Schrei who's quickest in the number 50 BMW GT4, the M4 GT4, which Michael Schrei is sharing with Thomas Jaeger. Look out for those two. Gustav Englieringer, the wheelchair-bound driver, Michael Fisher, Martin Kroll, the other drivers of that car. So it's a full 5-driver lineup, but that car has gone quicker than Nico Verdonk in the Aston Martin, John.
Rick Breukers in the 88. Describe a lap around the circuit for him. 3rd position, having just topped off the fuel. Through the first corner, then up the hill to the first set of S's. 3rd gear, he'll snatch 4th. Over to the right-hand side of the road, brake halfway down the curb, turn in, miss the sleeping policeman on the inside, the sausage curbs. All 3rd gear through here. That tells you how quick those S's are. Now over the rise, down into Casanova. He's got a KTM to go up the inside. That slightly compromised his entry, but it keeps him on the right-hand side of the road as he comes down through turn 7. Now into Arrabbiata. He'll set the car up from the left-hand side of the road. Just clip the Tricolore curbs on the right-hand side. Can't go out too far, but he did put the left wheels over the coloured curbs, but that was nice and neat there. 4th gear, 194 kilometres an hour as he exited that corner, down into the long hairpin. Starting to pick up pace again over another rise. So many of the corners here on the 5-kilometre circuit have got blind entry. It's a big slide as he comes out of what's that, turn 13 through the S's at 14. That was 12 actually. Oh, he's aborted the lap. He must have seen on his dashboard that he'd lost too much time. In the final corner now, builds it up again. Appiccini And I don't think there's still enough room in front of him with 6.5 minutes to go. He crosses the line. Let's see what his terminal speed is. He just gets 6, 252, 255, 257, 260, 262 kilometres an hour, and braking insanely late for the first corner.
The only driver who's improved in this second part of the session, if you will, after that pit, everybody seemed to come into the pits, is the EDEX Sport Racing Mercedes, number 17, which Dimitri Angelbert has managed to improve. He's down to 1 minute 48.6 now in car number 17. He's 8th fastest. Everybody else ahead of him has gone slower in this portion. And I just wonder, John, you were saying it might be a bit greasy. I just wonder whether perhaps it's the wind which has picked up a little bit.
Changed direction, maybe.
I don't think it's changed much direction, but it's just knocking them a little bit sideways in some of the fast sweeps with a bit of sideways movement. Certainly was visible when we were watching Roykers a little while ago. He's still on it though, isn't he? He's trying to put in a quicker lap. He's still 3rd fastest. 1:47.768 was his best from earlier in the session. 1:47.6 is what he's got to do to get a place on the front row of the grid.
Through 11 now, Pelagio, and down into, that's 11, so 12 now, that long right hand. It's all about patience in some of these long corners, and you can't get on the throttle too early. Through Bondetti and into the final corner now. Bondetti a very, very fast S-bend. 4th and maybe even 5th gear for some of the cars. Now back onto the start-finish line. Now, how's he doing? All right, but only all right. He's a 10th down in the first sector. On Onslow Cole, comes across the line. And we wait for the update on the timing screen.
48.092
Doesn't
on that,
improve.
which isn't an improvement on his earlier time.
Postiglione has improved though, 47.9, so he's in the 47s now as well.
David Perel a little bit further back in the Rinaldi Ferrari, car number 21. He's now done a 48.4, and that takes him up to 7th place. And behind him, another of the Rinaldi Ferraris improved as well. That was Andrea Montemini at the wheel of the 47 car. He's done a 48.678 now, and that puts him in 9th place overall. But at the top, nobody can do anything about Tom Onslow Cole. Talk at the top
by 3/4 of a second and more. 0.789 of a second.
Less than 4 minutes of the session remaining.
That's a magnificent lap, that, Paul.
Comes on towards the end of his lap now. Malicelli's done a 47.7 on his last lap compared to his 47.6, which was his best.
Starting to see some light colours on the timing screen, but they're all sort of from the bottom of the top 10 on down over, and in some of the A6AM positions. Let's just check those. So the A6AM leader is the leader overall. A6 Pro is now 2nd overall with Malicelli, so 16 and 11. In the classes, 991 class, still that Felipe Fernandez Laser time earlier on. He's pitted the number 987 Porsche. In SP2, it's still the 224. That's the BMW from
KTM.
Excuse me, that's the KTM, which leads that category. And GT4, oh, that has changed because it's the 50 car now.
Yeah. We did.
That's Hoffa Racing. That's the Schrei car. Yes, you did mention that.
Michael Schrei, we did mention that. Nico Verdonk
has gone back out.
He's back out again. He's 2nd, but he is over a second slower at the moment than the BMW M4 of Michael Schrei.
Right. That's in the number 1 Aston, of course, that Nico is qualifying. We're getting down to the money laps now. 2.5 minutes to go. Number 91 Porsche looking resplendent in its sort of flat grey out there at the moment. I do like a bare carbon coloured car. Always been something that has attracted me to them.
Frankenhout improves in the number 10 Hoffa Racing Mercedes. He's now 4th ahead of Postiglione's Lamborghini. So it's Ferrari, Mercedes, Ferrari, Ferrari, Mercedes. Audi's well down.
Who's in the Herberth car at the moment, Paul?
The 91 Herbert car is Robert Renauer.
Robert Renauer.
Yeah.
Right. 12th they are on there.
And Alfred is in the 93.
And they are 12th and 13th on the timing screens. The brothers Renault. And those are both Herbert-run cars. Is that they don't always run 2 cars, Paul, do they?
No, it's the first time that they've run 2
so.
cars in the Creventic series. Regular competitors in the ADAC GT Masters, where they run the modern car. But it's the first time they've actually had 2 cars here. And these are both 2019 cars that Herbert are running here. Less than a minute to go, and although Malicelli is, he's still not really get close enough. Tom Onslow Cole is into the pit lane, no doubt just getting his helmet off and hat on in order to be talked to from Nick Damon in a minute, no doubt. But Tom
we might even not have time for that, the way everything's being pushed up, but we'll see how it goes and whether somebody's about to improve. Tom Onslow Cole's at the fuel station at the moment, so his work is done.
Yeah, he won't be able to get back out before the end of the session.
But, I mean, who's going to get near that time? Nobody has looked near the 1:46.8. That's the only car
in the
46s.
Yeah, absolutely.
33's in, so no improvement for the Car Collection Motorsport Audi. Malicelli's gone through, so he doesn't improve. So there's only Rick Breukers who can snatch this away, and he's not going to do it. Frankenhout's on a good one. He's not on a good one for pole position, but he's on a decent one to go onto the front row, and does go on the front row. Hoffa Racing. So it's the 2 Mercedes AMG GT3s that lock out the front row at the moment, but still 7/10 of a second in that middle sector. What about Rick Breukers? Oh, Malicelli got across the line before the checkered flag. So
Malicelli
Malicelli,
out.
well, Malicelli hasn't been shown the flag. Breukers goes through and improves. Yes, he's in 4th now. No, he was in 4th before. Kouaji goes through. Postiglione is in the fuel. So it is only at the moment Malicelli's in the fuel, so he's not going to improve either. So an improvement at the end by Frankenhout, Christian Frankenhout. That's really impressive. It was a decent improvement for him. Took him 0.081 ahead of Malicelli. Mercedes AMG GT3 lock out the front row. 7/10 of a second for Tom Onslow Cole and SPS Auto Motors Performance, but behind them 3 cars in literally the blink of an eye. 2 cars absolutely in the blink of an eye, and then just another couple of tenths back before Car Collections Motorsport. And then the gaps are still pretty close down to Imperiale Racing in that Lamborghini Huracan, the 2018 version of that car. Very tight indeed. Top 10 separated by 1.8 seconds, but nearly half of that is the gap between 1st and 2nd.
Yes, that Imperiale Racing, the 32 car, the only one of the top group whose fastest time was disallowed. Everybody else managed to do a clean lap, which was then their fastest lap. But the 32 Postiglione car would have been 5th, but had his best time disallowed, so is 6th.
2 A6 AM category cars, but the same class in terms of the potential performance. Let's check some of the other of the pole sitters. Race Unions 987, number 987 Porsche has taken pole in 991 ahead of MRS GT Racing with their 980, and SP2 is RTR Project in their crossbow ahead of the True Racing similar machine, and in GT4 Hoffa Racing by Bonk with their BMW number 50 ahead of Aston Martin, the Vantage AMR GT4 from Pro Sport Performance. I'm going down to the end there, no sign of the number 4 car, which had its big incident early on. We'll have one very quick word with Tom Onslow Cole as he's waiting. He's been waiting patiently with Nick Damon before we say goodbye. One question only, Nick.
Tom, 3/4 of a second? How'd that happen?
I think it's because they were teasing me. They were, in the middle there. I really didn't know where we were. They didn't tell me purposefully, and they kept asking, "How's the car?" And I was like, Yeah, it feels quite good. Like it's quite, yeah, I've got some understeer and some oversteer, but it's really balanced. And then they asked again, like, yeah, but really, how is the car? And I kept thinking, what are we, like 3 seconds away or something here? Like, what's the issue? But they were just winding me up. So it was good to hear after a short while of games that we're right there and things are good. So all credit to the team. This SPS Mercedes is always fantastic, and that was a joy to drive.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Tom. See you in very little time on the grid. Thanks, man.
Nick Tierman down in the pit lane, and yes, absolutely right. The race time being changed. Check the website for details. We've got a compressed schedule for this evening, but we'll make sure that there's plenty of time for you to get a little bit of atmosphere for the grid and all of the news from down in the pit lane before we come back for part 1 of the Hankook 12 Hours of Mugello here in the Tuscan Hills. From us all for the moment. We'll take a breath. I guess you will too. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.